Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cards Hubs 365, brought to you by Gray Bar. I'm Mike Claiborne, and from KTRS Radio here in St. Louis, Bob Ramsey, the Rammer. It's
Michael?
great to see you, sir, and happy opening day.
I'm excited, but I know
Excited we all were.
We all were. I know a lot. Oh, are you excited about the season? Expecting you
Yeah.
to say, "Oh no, it's awful.
I
I'm
can't
not
wait
going
for it
to
to be over."
games.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going." It's baseball. It's Cardinals baseball. I am excited.
I'm excited because this is something new for a lot of us. As everyone knows, they didn't do a lot in the offseason as far as bringing in new players or making a trade. And so they rolled it out and said, let's see what you have with regard to the players that they have. And just being part of spring training and seeing the energy and the attention to detail and watching these guys all ascend together is what I'm anxious to see, with them coming together, knowing that you're going to get 500 at bats, you're going to get 100+ innings, you're going to have X amount of appearances out of the bullpen. That's something I'm looking forward to seeing, because it's not like these are kids
No.
that are coming up from the bus from Memphis. All these guys have big league experience, and that's what I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, and I think once you get over the idea, and let's face it, a crazy idea that the Cardinals are going to go spend with the top half dozen market teams.
Yeah.
Once you realize that's not going to happen, okay, what do we have? How do we take what we have and do our best to win games? Because that's all any team can do.
Yeah.
Here's what we have. How do you win with it? And figuring that out, to me, is part of the fun.
I think so. And, every game is different. Just like we spent this whole spring training trying to figure out what one lineup's going to look like on opening day. I remind people that there's a few more games that go beyond that. And so what you see on opening day is not what you're going to see probably in May or sooner. And you have
maybe game two.
Exactly. And I'm thinking like you on that front. One of the things about Ali that we've noticed, Ali doesn't have a problem shaking up the lineup and trying to get the matchups he's looking for. And when he does that, that means you just need to show up to the ballpark and be ready to play. You may play 8 innings, you may play 1, but you're going to play. And that's the fun thing about it.
The other thing is, and we'll probably get into it here in a little bit, when Ali talks about lineups and lineup construction, and I admit I'm a lineup nerd to a fault.
Because, I think that's one of your strong suits, by the way.
Well, that shows how the rest of me goes. But I think the key is, once you have a few pieces in place, the rest of the lineup, day in, day out, doesn't really matter, because you never know. Your number 7 hitter might have a big day, depending on a matchup. And so as long as you put your guys in a position to be successful, that's every manager and every coach's deal. Now, if you got a guy who you hope can be your leadoff guy or hope can be your cleanup guy or whatever, hope is not a plan.
No.
And so who's performing? How do you put him in a position to be successful? How do you know when, all right, his hot streak's probably going to, you don't want to play a guy to failure. That's the hardest part, I think, of being a manager. How do you not play them to failure and keep everybody in a good groove? I think that's a real critical skill.
That's the one thing I think we don't talk about enough, is that manager's got to have a feel on, is his run about to start or is it about to stop?
Absolutely.
And you want to do it the day before.
Right.
And that's the one thing. Some guys will stay with a guy too long, and then all of a sudden he starts to fall downhill. And then there's another guy that you would like to have him face a lefty or whatever, and you say, well, we'll give him one more day. Well, that's one less day you're going to have him where he can be effective.
That's right. And that's where, and it's not a specific formula that you can look up in a book.
Yeah.
This is
it's
a
all
feel and knowing your players.
No,
and that's what makes a great manager.
This has been a very interesting offseason, as we talked about. And lineups have been something you and I have gone back and forth on. And I have to give Ali credit. He had us all scratching our heads, not about the lineup, which we haven't seen yet, but just the roster itself.
I don't get it, to be quite honest.
I'm a little, it's unique is what it is. And I'm sure there's a logical reason for it. If he wouldn't have done it if it wasn't. But there's something he's seeing for the future, I think, as well, and why he elected to go with certain players. Some of them prove that they should be on the roster by what they did in spring. Others, you relying on what they've done in the past and hope that they can probably turn it around and put it in a more positive direction. But it's a head scratcher. to a point.
And I think the two spots that I think confuse the most of us are Siani making it, Fermin not making it, and then the trickle down from all those things. Once you decide two guys that you need to be good, you believe in Gorman and Walker are on the team, excuse me, then the rest of it, okay, that's what we're going to do there. Now, how do we piece in the rest of it? And you and I talked, if the Cardinals, because there's another guy, and or the Gorman is another key piece to that, in that if you've decided we don't think we can trade Arenado, then I can see Gorman being on the roster. If you thought you could have traded him, Arenado, then I would have thought, wouldn't it be good to have Gorman playing third base every day in Memphis? But so it tells me the Cardinals don't think they can make that move. Okay, so let's live with that and move forward. Then Fermin did everything he could to make the club and didn't make it, and you don't have a backup shortstop. And then Siani is Victor Scott light, yet he makes the team. And on a team that many of us think are going to be offensively challenged, and you let a guy like Koperniak not go. I know he's left-handed, but if guys can hit, they can hit. So I think those are some kind of moving parts, and it's all connected.
To one move that you couldn't make.
Right.
Yeah.
To one move you couldn't make.
And, we can go back and forth on why you didn't make it or why you couldn't make it. But I really feel like that's kind of been the one holdup for everyone.
Yeah.
The Siani thing, I think that's an issue where he played really well last year. I thought had he not been hurt, he would have been in the conversation from a metric standpoint for a Gold Glove. He did everything well.
Oh, yeah, those metrics were off the charts, no doubt.
Offensively, yeah, he had his highs and lows, and he struggled during the spring at some point. And then he started to come around a little bit. And there were a couple of balls that he did hit that either were hit to someone or just were foul, or, those are the sort of things where you say, okay, you get into the if factor a lot.
And don't look just at the numbers. One of the things that, and I fall, even though I know better, I fall victim to it all the time. It's not just the numbers. It's how you got the numbers or didn't get them. Are you your ball to bat contact? Are you hard hit rate? All those kind of things matter. Are you working on, let's say a given player really struggled with the slider away. Have you been working on it? And did you sacrifice at bats by trying to work on that? That matters. It's not the bottom line necessarily in spring.
Let me run that. It's interesting you talk about the slider. There's some guys who just can't hit it. So do you work on trying to hit something you've had no success at, or are you working on trying to recognize it's a pitch you can't hit and you don't swing at it?
I think it depends on the player and what you think his ceiling can be. Does he have the kind of ability to learn and get better at things, or this is who you are, know what to lay off of, and know how to recognize the things you can do damage with. But I don't think it's a set formula for every player.
You mentioned damage, and that's something that the Cardinals obviously want to be more effective with. Last year, Cardinals hit 248 as a team. Yankees hit 248 as a team.
So the
Cardinals watched the Yankees in the World Series because they didn't do enough damage.
Right.
And that's the thing that has been emphasized so much in spring training, doing damage. When you have runners on base, you got to get them in. You got to get them in somehow, some way. So with the addition of Victor Scott, that gives you that extra weapon of being in a position to get runners in because he can steal a base. You don't need 3 hits in order to drive them in. Is that a weapon that they're going to emphasize top of the order or bottom of the order?
Well, I can only tell you what I would do. And
Bob, what would you do?
Thanks, Mike. That's a great question, Mike.
This is Bob Ramsey from KTRS in St. Louis, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're quite welcome.
For me, again, it goes back to we were talking about who's hot and who's not. I'd let Victor Scott lead off to start the season. I don't know that Ollie will, because Mason Wynn, appropriately so, is his guy. He's our guy too.
Yes.
We love Mason Wynn, but he's struggling with the bat. And I think when you have different pieces you can move around, you can do that. But you also have to figure out, and this is what I don't know and admit it, the psyche. If you move a guy down, Does he get down on himself and get buried?
Is that the wrong message that you're sending to him?
Is it a wrong message? But sometimes you got to say, well, you may be down on yourself, but I got to win games. So figure it out. And those are all the inner working machinations in a team, because these aren't numbers here. That's one of the problems with analytics and, quite frankly, fantasy sports and betting. All three of those things give you, I think, a false look at what's happening, because these are men. These are people. You have to be able to manage people more than those numbers. If you manage people right, the numbers by and large will follow.
That's one of the X factors that is not on paper by Ali Marmol.
Mm-hmm.
He is an incredible manager of people
and
from
that's
a
what
transparency standpoint, where it's not like he's doing a bunch of cheerleads or anything like that, but he knows his people.
Mm-hmm.
He knows the inner part. And as you talk about analytics and things of that nature, they don't have a measurable for this.
Nope.
Bob, your heart is a 7.6. No, they don't have that.
No.
So you have to get in somebody's head and get into what motivates them to be the person that they are as far as a player, and also know enough about their background to know what they can take and where you need to back off. And I really think that's something he does not get enough credit for.
I agree.
Knowing his personnel.
And the thing is, pardon the interruption, but that's a different show.
No,
sorry.
Pretty good at one point, right?
Yeah. Is it still on the air? Not for long. Anyway, but I think when we talk about Scott and Wynn in particular, but also throw in Nootbaar. So there's three guys right there that on a given day Ali could lead off. And then you look at guys who could hit second: Scott, Wynn, Nootbaar, Contreras, Donovan. So there's five guys that you could legitimately say in a given lineup on a given day could hit second. Then third, Contreras, who's I think hits third most days.
Spring this year,
and I can we do an aside? And I want to get back to that though.
All right.
An aside.
What side you want to get on?
This is good.
Oh, okay.
With Contreras, this is old school stuff, but you'll get it. He kind of reminds me attitudinally and with the right-handed bat of Orlando Cepeda.
Preaching to the choir, brother. Well, there was one day I was watching him in the cage, and I was like, who does he remind me of? And that was the first name that came
because
up.
of attitude.
Yeah.
And he's positive, and he's there for his teammates. I just think the world of Wilson Contreras.
John Rooney, voice of the Cardinals, asked a question during the broadcast this spring. You think he can hit 40? And I had to think about it for a second, because
playing 150 instead of 120?
150 playing first base and not having everything else that comes with catching. And I had to think about it, and the answer was, I think he could.
I would plug in 30, but if you said, is it possible to get 40? Yes.
But I think it also depends on who's hitting around him.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they can pitch around him, they will. But if whoever's hitting behind him, if Arenado plays like Arenado of 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that's going to be a pretty good 1-2 combination.
But if you love the righty-lefty alternation, which I do, then, you can look at a couple of different left-handed bats behind Contreras, in between those two guys to, keep the opposition honest instead of, okay, we're bringing in our right-hander to nail those two. But if you've got Burleson when he's hitting, if you've got Nootbaar could hit cleanup, I think those, that gives you some more flexibility there.
Yeah, and I would throw Donovan in that, because Donovan's a contact guy in that situation.
Donovan is a guy, if he hits 3, 4, 5, which on its face you go, ooh, I don't know if I like that. He doesn't have a ton of power. But then I go back to 1985 and Tommy Herr driving in 100 with not a bunch of home run power.
What, he had 9 home runs that year?
Something like that.
Yeah, it was very low.
And so there is the kind of flexibility and allows the manager creativity to put guys in certain matchups on certain days. And I think it could work. And I think April and May will go a long way in helping Ali and all of us kind of figure out what's going to work. Then there's one more guy in there, not counting the two young guys that you need to come through. If Walker and Gorman come close to what we think are their potentials, then all of a sudden the lineup, it doesn't even matter. Throw your guys out there, you get a good game.
Yeah.
But my guy is Ivan Herrera. This kid can rake.
He can hit. There's no doubt about that.
Having him in the lineup most days is going to give him even more depth and flexibility, him being Ollie.
Yeah, and that's something I'm glad you brought up Herrera, because we went through that whole order, and Herrera might be the best natural hitter of any of them. He just happens to catch for a living.
He could hit 4 through 7 or 8
Yeah.
and really be dynamic for it.
And so when you look at this team who's so left-handed organization-wise,
yeah,
to find a guy like that and put him in any of those spots really gives you a weapon. And the left, right, that certainly comes into play a whole lot more. And it really sets up better for the Cardinals than I think people think.
I think you're right about that. And I think it could be good, but it's a lot of potential stuff. Is Mason Wynn going to hit? Is Victor Scott going to hit? We already mentioned Gorman and Walker. I think Arenado will be representative. Is that kind of a cop-out?
That's a fair, you know, considering the last couple of years, I think that's a fair way to put it.
Can he give you 20 and 80? Can he give you 25 and 80?
If he can give me 25 and 95, then I'll take it and run with it, and I'll see you in postseason.
That'd be a big bounce back. He could be a comeback player of the year if he does that.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, he worked on some things, and I'm anxious to see what that looks like when the games really start.
The other thing about the lineup is it'll be interesting to see with lineup construction how much Ollie really wants to run. The advanced metric people, I don't know them in the Cardinal organization. By and large, in the game, they don't like stealing bases.
No.
But when you're power challenged and you've got guys like Scott and Wynn manufacturing runs, I just hope we don't turn our backs on that just because it's not trendy. I believe it was a police inspector in San Francisco once said that's a hell of a price to pay for being stylish.
I think Callahan was his name.
Yeah, I believe that's right.
Yeah. I think I heard about it.
And I really think a lot about that. Just because it's the stylish thing to do, don't turn your back on things that can work given your set of circumstances.
You know, I'm on that same boat where the argument is, well, if he steals a base and that leaves a base open, they can pitch around a guy or walk a guy.
You don't have Babe Ruth on this team.
Well, we've both seen enough teams that have had base stealers. It didn't seem to affect them.
That's right.
It didn't seem to affect them. And so they said, well, they're just going to walk them. Okay. But for instance, we look at opening day. Let's say the lineup has Scott leading off and Newbar's hitting second.
Mm-hmm.
Newbar's a guy who can put it in play. So now Scott's at second base easy before Newbar even swings the bat.
And if they want to walk him, fine, because you got
the other guys behind him. So, you know, I really sometimes think that's more of I won't say cop-out, but an alternate excuse that you have in your back pocket that you really don't believe.
Well, here's the one thing on the running.
It really is protect your butt.
On the running game, too, it started to change a little bit, but you have to be successful at a certain percentage.
Yeah.
You got to be 70%,
at least.
Maybe even 75. And if you're doing that, then it works. But especially look, I understand a team with a ton of power, you don't want to run into outs because you want your big boys to be able to hit bombs. Until the Cardinals show they're that, and I don't think we will. Now, if you tell me Arenado's going to hit 25 and Contreras is going to hit 35, Nootbaar's going to hit 20, and Walker's going to hit 20, and Gorman's going to hit 25 or 30, okay, we don't have to run
we'll let
as
you
much.
know when. Yeah.
But how many of us are betting on all those things to happen?
A whole lot of things have to happen.
Right.
For you. And in this game of baseball, just like as we talk about lineup, we already have in the back of our minds that those 9 names you're writing down, they're not all going to have a 3-hit night.
It rarely happens.
Yeah. I mean, when you get all those guys on the same page in the same night, you circle that day on the calendar because it just doesn't happen that much. So it's one of those things where it's going to take time to figure out what you have. My cutoff day is Flag Day, but you know, with this team, I think you're going to know a lot sooner than later on where they're going to head and how they're going to score.
Yeah, and then the one spot we didn't really talk about is DH. I think many of us thought automatically Burleson, and maybe he and Baker platoon. But if Walker's got to play every day, which at his age, he needs to play.
Yeah, he needs to play.
Does that mean Gorman and Burleson are going to be fighting for left-handed?
I think it's a
DH
good question.
at
No,
bats?
I think it's a good question, and I think this is where it comes down to matchups. How do they hit certain lefties? I mean, certain right-handed pitchers.
Yeah.
And sometimes we see a lot more reverse splits now with guys.
We do, yeah.
And that's something that you have to do a deeper dive on now if you're the manager. And our manager is very well prepared for that. So I think it's going to come down to matchups. Is he a ground ball pitcher? Is he a fly ball pitcher? You know, what ballpark are you playing in? Who's hitting around him? Who's swinging the bat? Well, there's so many intangibles that go into who's going to play DH compared to the other guy that it's going to be a day-to-day situation. And it'll be something that you'll wonder, well, why isn't he playing? He had a 3-hit night last night. Well, this guy may give him problems for this reason or that reason. So, and that's why in this day of information, they have so much to dispel your concern.
Right.
That you just let them tell you why, and then you can take it from there instead of assuming because it looks that way on paper. Well, there's a little bit more paper to read than what we've been accustomed to dealing with.
Exactly right.
Of course, we want to remind everybody this is Cards 365, brought to you by Gray Bar. I'm Mike Claiborne. He's Bob Ramsey from KTRS, and we're talking about opening day, Cardinals, Minnesota Twins. You and I have seen a number of opening days. What's the one thing that stands out for you, and do you have a specific memory?
Oh, was it the World Series? I think it was the World Series when Gussie Busch almost fell off the wagon, wasn't it?
83.
Wasn't that right?
Oh, yeah.
82?
No, it was 82. Remember when he went over the mound? They made a hard turn. And thank goodness he was buckled in.
No, opening day. No, nothing in particular. I just think that the Cardinals have done a really nice job in embracing history. And that's what makes it spectacular is their attention to that history and understanding how it ties generations of Cardinal fans together, and they all come together on that one day, which should be a holiday in St. Louis, opening day.
I agree.
And but I got to tip my cap to the Cardinals for really having a feel and an understanding how generationally history, the Red Jackets, and all those things matter to Cardinal fans.
That's like for me. When the Red Jackets come out, every one of those players you look at, and there's a great memory of what they did. And for those parents or whomever who are explaining to kids who didn't see these players play, just like the way we had to talk to Joe Roderick about people he's never seen.
Yeah,
he hadn't seen anybody.
That was before I was born.
I was
pick up a book.
Exactly. Yeah, book. Why would I do that? I did that in high school.
Is it on my phone?
Exactly. So that for me is the high water mark. To the point when Gibson and Red Shane Dixon, I didn't see Red play, but knew enough about him because he was in our booth all the time. When to see those players come out and have the memories, that's what makes the Cardinals special. And I'm sure they can say that in other cities. I don't know how many.
Not all of them.
I don't know how many guys jump out of a pickup truck in Cleveland. Okay, I don't know how many guys are part of the celebration in Pittsburgh with all the championship trophies that they have. And I don't
in
think
Seattle, do they celebrate Gene Broadbender coming out, who played for the Pilots in 1969?
Or having Danny Kaye, the ghost of Danny Kaye come out and throw out a first pitch.
Right.
But I know it happens in St. Louis. And the fun thing about it is we're seeing a new generation of greats, of Hall of Famers. You know, we still have Ozzie, then you have Ted Simmons, who's one of our all-time favorite people as well as players. And then you have the Red Jackets, the Cardinals, was Willie McGee or some of the other guys, Jim Edmonds, Chris Carpenter, all those guys who come out, and you have those great memories of them. But I look back, and when Bob Gibson would get off of that truck, and he'd have that strut, that same stride he had as he was going to the mound, and you think about how good this guy was. And the numbers don't lie on him.
Oh, absolutely not.
And that's one of those things where, he played back. Hey, listen, he played as many of them played in maybe the greatest generation we've ever seen.
Oh, to me, it's the golden age.
Yes.
46 through 68 is the golden age.
There's no doubt. And when you look at the numbers Gibson had against Aaron and Mays and the only guy that really could hit by was Billy Williams. Because Aaron and Mays, I think, hit like maybe 210, maybe. because Mays was scared of Gibson because Gibson would throw inside. Willie didn't want to get hit. And Aaron was just like, I'll just wait for the next guy.
And for the Joe Rodericks of the world, Billy Williams was a 3,000 hit left fielder for the Chicago Cubs. Yeah. Just letting you know. Hit third in front of Ernie Banks and Ron Santo.
There you go.
I do have an opening day memory, and you're going to remember it too because you were there and we didn't know each other. When the Cardinals, they started on the road that year, came home, and Dick Allen came out to third base. We were both we could have been standing next to each other. We were kids. We didn't even know.
Yeah.
1970. And it was a several minute standing ovation for Richie Allen. And we were both there. And it was that is my favorite opening day memory, without question.
You're right, because he was a new guy on the block. We knew him from Philadelphia, and Philadelphia media didn't treat him right.
No.
And we were glad to have him because he was
overjoyed.
And getting to know his family. And one of the fun things I did in 2024 was at the baseball winter meetings the night he was elected into the Hall of Fame. I was with Dick Jr. And we sat and talked stories. Yeah, he should have been in.
I'm bitter.
He should have been in a few years. He and Buck O'Neil should have been in the Hall of Fame well before they passed. But I always tell the story about when Dick Allen hit that home run off of the Stadium Club. It was a day game. And so Dick Jr. told me the story that he had told him. He said he was rounding the bases after he hit the home run, and a ball came out on the field. He thought a ball got away in the bullpen. Because remember, the bullpens was down the corner. Yeah. He thought it was a ball that came out of the bullpen. It was the ball he hit off the glass at the old Busch Stadium. As to me, and you've seen as many, pound for pound, the strongest man I ever swing a baseball
Folks, he was 5'10", 5'11". He swung a 42-ounce bat.
And cocked it like this. I mean, he did that.
Kind of for the Joe Rodericks out there, kind of Gary Sheffield.
Yeah.
That Gary Sheffield.
Yeah, only he was swinging something heavier than whatever Sheffield.
So the, this is an aside, not about opening day, but that reminded me.
Yeah.
We both loved Dick Allen so much that and Bing Devine was the GM, and I love Bing Devine. An unbelievable gentleman. He constructed the 64 championship. He went over to the Mets and was part and parcel in developing their world championship. He comes back to the Cardinals. One of the biggest mistakes he ever made was dealing Dick Allen after 1 year.
He had 36 home runs that year, and I mean they couldn't get him out. It wasn't like
he only played 120 games.
Yeah, he got hurt at the end,
hamstring.
It wasn't like he had a whole lot of protection in that lineup, and it was. And I was talking because Ted Simmons was on that team. It was his first year, and we talked about, you couldn't take your eyes off of him because once he stepped in the batter's box, and I've told this story before. I'm quoting Mike Shannon. Mike Shannon tells a story that they were playing against Philadelphia in Philadelphia at Old Connie Mack, where it was like 440 to center field, and they had a flagpole about 50, 60 feet on the other side. Nelson Briles was pitching. Nelson Briles, as Mike would say, had a curveball he was proud of. So they're going over to hear this meeting. They say, hey, whatever you do, don't throw Dick Allen breaking ball. And Briles said he wasn't seeing one like that, like the one I got today. Yeah. So Mike, for some reason, was playing center field. 100 degrees in Connie Mack Stadium that day. No wind through the ballpark. And he hangs one to Richie Allen. And it's a line drive that maybe was 35, 40 feet off the ground. I mean, he just kept going. Mike ran to the wall and looked up. He said, when it went by the flagpole, I could have swore I saw the flag move. So now they get to the dugout wanting to see what Mr. College, Nelson Briles, had to say. And the dugout was really small, so, you had to really kind of cram in there. And so Briles takes a towel, towels himself off, takes a deep breath, says, yeah, you're right. He can hit one.
He can hit a breaking ball.
But, man, what a fascinating player.
Yeah.
That we don't talk enough about. And I hope the Cardinals in some way honor him this year. It was 1 year he was here, but, man, I've never seen a player have a better year.
He was fantastic.
He was fantastic.
Anyway, that came from that opening day that I wanted to remind us about. That we were both there in the bleachers.
You want to talk some pitching?
Well, yeah. Why isn't McGreevy on this team?
Well, they want him to pitch. And in all honesty,
he's your ace.
Yeah. So this is what I said before spring training started, and Joe will tell you, I thought they should have made him a 2-starter because I think sometimes we get too caught up. Well, we want to bring him along slowly, let him be the 5th starter. Look, man, if this guy's your future, run him out there.
I'm okay with that if you've got guys better.
Yeah.
Or he needs a little work. What's the work he needs?
He didn't do here's what he didn't have a chance to do, pitch out of trouble, because he was really good in the spring.
And last summer.
Yes. He has not shown a hitch in his get along yet. And I think they want to see that and how to adjust to it. I just want to see him pitch. It was a really tough decision, I feel, for a couple of reasons. One, the guys in the rotation you're already financially committed to. Two,
which I hate.
Yeah.
That's part of the deal.
It's business.
Yeah.
Business.
It hadn't been that way in the radio business.
Yeah, well, we learned that firsthand.
Yeah. We're paying you, but guess what? You're out.
Yeah. We'll send you your check. The other thing was the starters, all I thought accounted for themselves well.
The guy I'm worried about is Palante. And I've always he earned the spot by the way he pitched last year. He was really good. But something about his mechanics worry me. Kind of like a golfer that has a complicated swing. That's why while I love Ivan Herrera, I'm backing up to make my point. But he's got a complicated swing. And if it gets off, how easily can you get it back? Palante, I feel like, has a complicated motion.
Yeah.
I could be wrong about that. If it goes haywire, how hard is it to get it back? So that's my concern about Andre.
Well, here's the other thing with him. Obviously, he's got to get the ball down. And he had it up a little bit. And maybe mechanics has something to do with that. But also with runners on base, you're already concerned about being able to throw runners out from a catching standpoint. And his delivery gives a good base stealer the step he needs in order to have the advantage. The problem you see with some pitchers, they get a guy on and now their focus is split. I got this hitter I have to deal with. Oh, yeah, I got
this guy over here.
I got to keep him close.
Can they handle it?
Yeah, I got to keep him close. I don't want to put him in scoring position. And I think Andre Palante is a very bright guy. I think he's a very well-prepared individual. But I want to talk to him about how that mindset works. When you already have what you would call a intriguing, if not complicated, delivery, how do you make sure that you stay consistent? But I felt like he started to get better as
spring wore on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because those first couple of starts, you're trying to see what the hitter's reaction is. You as they say, working on a few things. And I thought he was into that mode for a while. And then once he figured out, okay, this is where I need to be, he started to bear down a little bit.
And I don't want anybody to think I'm disrespecting him. Like I want to reiterate, he earned a spot last summer. He was really good
down the stretch.
He was really good. So, but when you have 7 guys for 5, maybe 6 spots, how much does performance play into it? How much does being a veteran play into it? I know those are all complicated things, but when you've got a team that nobody thinks can win 90 games, and you've got and you've got a young pitcher who might be your best guy, I got to get my best guys. I got to play my best guys. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I made this analogy. I don't really care about who jumps out of the Ford pickup truck on opening day. I really care about, is that guy going to be part of us winning when it really comes into play?
Yeah.
And granted, you can say the games you don't win in April are the ones you need in September. I understand that. But there's going to be a place for him. Sliding Matt's back to the bullpen, who I thought he was really good. He was good. He was healthy, first of all. That was the first thing. He was healthy. There was no total right answer with this because all of those guys justify their existence.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I don't think they're going to play themselves or pitch themselves out of that situation.
Mike, water seeps to its own level.
I need to write that down.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Take that with you. No,
especially for you youngsters out there.
Meaning, some guys are going to be good. Some guys are going to stink.
Yeah.
And then when will the club say, okay, now it's time to make a move because we're going to try and be competitive?
I think the bigger issue is how short is the leash?
Yeah, right.
I mean, is it one bad outing, or is it going to be a couple things that you don't see that maybe you need to work on, or you look like you might have pulled something? We'll put you on.
Have you ever been to the Rendezvous in Memphis?
Exactly.
Really good barbecue.
I know a guy there that can get you a good table. Yeah. So you don't have to worry
Right.
about that. So it's there's going to be some roster jockeying that's going to take place, but everybody's going to get a shot, and that's the fun thing I'm looking forward to. Now, with regard to the bullpen,
I like the bullpen.
I love the bullpen, but I am one who believes that as good as your closer was last year in Ryan Helsley, I need a plan B guy. If I use Helsley and I won 2 in a row and I'm on a road trip, I got to find another guy. I'm going to tell Helsley, you can come to the ballpark if you want to, but you're not pitching. I don't care what to say. And Ollie had to do that a couple of times last season because
I prefer Ollie do it than Helsley do it.
Yes, yeah. Let it be
2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Let it be the manager's idea instead of you saying
we communicate.
Yeah, and
tell me how you're feeling, and I'll tell you when you're pitching.
There you go. And that's what Ollie did a lot of last year.
Mm-hmm.
He was in communication. He and Dusty Blake. Again, I thought he did a masterful job of not just having Helsley, but getting those matchups, getting them in the right lanes in the seventh and eighth inning.
He could be the best closer in the game.
So
and he was.
I want to make sure I have a plan B and who that other guy can be. Maybe it's Fernandez. He stepped up a couple of times last year.
We're talking about mixing and matching.
Right.
Though. What if the ninth inning you need a closer and it's a couple of really dangerous lefties, and then you go to the Mad Mexican instead of the Mad Hungarian, JoJo, who reminds me of
Bob,
every time he comes. Part of it's body type. Yeah. I get that, but he pitches with some emotion.
Yeah.
And I really like him, and I think he's going to be really key.
I think his confidence level really was built. He pitched with a couple of things last year that really kind of slowed him down, but he pitched through it.
Got through it.
And that's a learning process that he went through last season, which is going to make him better this year with regard to knowing his body and knowing what he can do and being honest with the manager. Hey, I'll take the ball, Skip. Oh, no, you really can't. You're killing us because of the fact that if you can't go, we now are prepared to have someone else slide in that place compared to you going out taking one for the team when you didn't have to. Because
that's
this bullpen is deep enough where you don't have to take one for
3 lefties.
Yeah, you got 3 good ones.
Yes.
And that's the thing that a lot of teams wish they had because we are now in a true matchup society of baseball. And you want to have your guy against that guy. More than ever compared to a guy coming in. I get anybody you want to. I don't care who you put in batter spot. I get him too. It's all about matchups.
Agreed.
And we are lucky enough to have those matchups available. So I'm kind of like, I look at it like a hockey game where I have 2 lines because I'm not going to pitch the same guys every day. So if you guys go 2 days in a row, guess what? These other guys, I have enough depth in my bullpen.
Well, with 8 relievers, you've got assuming you have 5-man rotation with your 8 relievers, you can go every other day. You don't. I prefer when we're ahead versus when we're behind split of a bullpen. But the game, when you're playing every day, those kind of plans, you better be able to adapt.
Yeah,
because it won't stay the way you want it.
So with that said, and that's a great point you make, you have to make sure you have players who have to be able to adjust. I'm only supposed to come in the 7th inning or the 8th inning. No,
I need you today.
I need you right exactly. And and that's where Ollie again comes into play in knowing his people and knowing what he can get out of. And I don't think it's a coincidence that some people aren't here anymore since Ollie's here, because Ollie, like every good manager, wants to make sure he has guys that he knows he can get something out of for the right reason, not just like the Mr. Showman or a situation where I'm only going to be around when the going's good.
Yeah. The other thing is too, having a bullpen that top to bottom that you trust. Well, how come he didn't go to so-and-so? If a manager doesn't trust a guy, I would tell fans, put yourself in the manager's spot, and you've got a reliever. Let's say it's Joe Roderick, and you just don't think he can get anybody out.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
How in good conscience,
right?
As a manager, can you say, well, you got to go to him? He can't get anybody out.
He can't get anybody out.
Well, why is he here? That's a separate question.
Yeah, because we kind of his contract or whatever the case is,
and
we don't have anybody better in the minors that's really ready.
That's exactly right. So those are the things you also got to think about as you go through game to game, day to day to day.
And that's the fun thing about being around Ollie. He's very transparent with the media. If they ask him the right question, he'll give you a better answer than the question.
Yeah.
And that's something that you don't get everywhere. And he has nothing to hide. He's going to be who he is. And I think his players appreciate that too.
I think so too.
And that's something that
he's got their back. But if somebody's not playing well, he'll
let you know. Yeah. Hey, look, we got to be better.
Mm-hmm.
And he's already had that conversation with the player before anything is said to you, me, Joe, or whomever. He's already had that conversation. Right. Yeah, he's not a cryptic message sender.
No.
So
which is good.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds this year. All right. I think the Cardinals are going to be better than what the prognosticators say. If they stay healthy.
I think if they get if a couple of guys stay healthy and can achieve their career numbers or approach potential, I think it's a team that can win games in the 80s.
Throw in the fact that when you look at this division, and I know people say, well, it's a weak division. Is it weak or are they all comparable? And there's
I think MLB is going to declare nobody from the Central Division gets to go into postseason this year. I think it's going to be a rule coming down probably about the All-Star break. Central Division is not. No, we're going to be relegated.
You can't come.
You got to. We're going to let you play in the Pacific Coast League.
Yeah, you can play in that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but no,
we don't. We prefer you do something.
I think it's wide open. I think the Central Division is wide open. Now, does that mean somebody's going to come out of there winning 98 games? I don't
think there's a Milwaukee Brewer wire team in this thing.
No, I don't think so either.
I think Cincinnati, because of their manager, and they can pitch a little bit, and in that ballpark, who knows what happens.
You better be able to pitch.
Yeah.
I think they'll be fun, but I think the ballpark will do them in.
Mm-hmm.
I think Pittsburgh's got some really nice pitching, but I don't know about the rest of it. Milwaukee has come back to the pack, in my view. The one team, I'm talking about the Cardinals getting questions answered positively. If the Cubs get some questions answered positively, they could come out of it.
Yeah. I look at them. I like their starting pitching. Their everyday lineup is okay. They're growing with some people like Pete Crow Armstrong and some other guys. Yeah. They're trying to fill in a blank here and there. Nico Horner is one of my favorite people to watch. Swanson's going to give you everything you need from him.
He had a good spring.
Ian Happ will always have a job as long as he's in our division, because if he doesn't kill anybody, he kills the Cardinals.
But he's a pro.
But he is. He's made himself into a very good player. Now, when you think about their bullpen, okay, Ryan Presley going to be your closer. Okay, maybe. But who's going to get him there? And they're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
So I'll run this by you before we wrap up. What happens if this team is at the break and we're getting near the trade deadline, and not only are you in it, you're really in it? Do you make a move? Do you load up? Or do you stay where you have and think that gets you to the finish line?
Do you still have 7 starters where you're dealing from strength? Because that could be. Yeah. Now you say.
And if one of those starters is really pitching well and you think you can do without him.
Or even if he's just somebody's desperate, other contenders desperate. I just need a guy who can give me 5 every 5th day. You've got several of those.
Yeah.
So under your scenario, if you're close and really feeling it and you're in July, I think you can deal from strength.
That's a great way to look at it, because this is a season unlike any we've ever seen before. I'll tell you what it reminds me of. Was it the 85 team that nobody thought was going to be very good?
Because 84 wasn't
84 was bad. And remember, we were going to pick to finish last, and nobody knew what the Cardinals really had.
Right.
And you get an injury.
Nobody knew Vince Coleman.
Nobody knew about this guy and that guy. Andy Van Slyke comes on. There was so many things that lined up. And they had this guy named Todd Worrell, who they didn't know.
You figured out how to overcome the loss of Suter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the Cardinals in that manner. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're going to steal as many bases. This is not Whitey ball.
No.
But I think you have some interesting ingredients that, if they all come together at the same time, would make this team not only the surprise of baseball, but then you say, well, wait a minute, they're the Cardinals.
Right.
I would expect nothing less.
figure
But
it
just
out.
do it with a new cast of
They'll
players.
figure it out.
All right.
We'll see.
Well, I think we've covered a few things for you all as far as opening day and what this season looks like. Don't forget, Cardinals 365, Cards Hub 365 is on every day right here on our lovely hub that we call the Sports Hub STL. For Bob Ramsey of KTRS, I'm Mike Claiborne. Don't forget to tune in and check out all the other programming that we have to provide for you. You name the sport, we got it for you right here on Sports Hub STL here in St. Louis. For Bob, I'm Mike. We'll see you soon.